I'm going to be applying epoxy on this industrial floor. Keep watching our video, we'll show you how we do it. Hey, what's up guys? It's Jeff Lepard from DoItAllCeiling.com. Thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to be applying epoxy on this industrial floor. So what we got to do is first start with the floor prep. I'm going to show you around this room. It's actually a utility room, a garbage room. So what we have is the clients actually applied some paint, some concrete paint to the floor. But before we apply the epoxy, we have to grind that off. That's part of the floor prep. So we're going to have to grind manually by hand around the corners of the walls using a hand grinder because the floor grinder leaves about an inch or two from the wall. Also around this compactor track, we're going to have to do that all by hand. You can see some sitting water that we had obviously leaking out of the compactor. So we're going to have to remove that water, prep this area where a lot of grease and water sits, so that it can actually adhere, the epoxy can adhere to the floor. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to start by grinding the edges of the walls before we start using the floor grinder. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up and we'll show you how we start doing that. So we're all set up to start grinding the edges around the wall where the floor grinder won't reach. So we're just going to grind about 2 to 3 inches from the wall, just scuff up to remove the paint and get the concrete bare. So we've got this Makita 7-inch grinding disc on here. We're just going to go ahead and start using that. We've got our breathing apparatus because it's going to get a little dusty. I've got my knee pads. I have my earplugs in. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so we finished prepping the edges with the hand grinder. So we've got this Clark floor grinder with some diamond blades on the bottom that's going to remove the paint and just smooth out the concrete, just to scuff it up and clean it so that the epoxy can adhere better to the concrete. So we're just going to go ahead and start the machine up and begin the floor grinding process. Okay, so we just finished vacuuming the entire area after we've finished using the floor grinder, just to make sure that all the dust and debris is free and clear. So that way we're ready to start the epoxy patch process on the cracks. If you've ever laid epoxy, let me know what product you guys use in the comment section below. Okay, so we're going to start with the patch next. So we're ready to begin the epoxy patch process of the application. We're going to be filling in all the cracks and any kind of holes in the floor before we begin our first coat. So here we're using Enviro Epoxy products. We have a component A, which is the epoxy component. We have component B, which is the hardener that mixes with component A. And component C, in this particular application, this just thickens up the epoxy to the desired thickness that you want to use. So what you do is you just mix, once you have A and B mixed, you use the component C together, and that will give you the desired viscosity that you want to actually work with your trowel or spatula. So the first thing we need to do is we're just going to open up component A, and we're going to pour all of component B in. And it's very important when you're working with epoxy, whether it's the epoxy patch or the actual application process for the epoxy color, that you mix it very thoroughly. It has to be 100% mixed. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems with the epoxy not sticking, or you could have future problems with that. So you should be mixing it for a few minutes before you actually use it. Don't forget to check out our other videos. Actually, I have done some other epoxy videos you can see on the other videos as well, where we do other commercial or residential. We did a custom flake epoxy job, so go ahead and check out that video as well. Really appreciate it if you give this video a like. Thanks, guys. So we're just gonna go ahead and mix this. Okay, so component A and B have been mixed thoroughly. We're going to add component C. That's just to thicken it up to the desired viscosity that I want, and then continue mixing that. It's a little bit messy. It's just like a white fluff. We're just going to go ahead and pour that in. I know I'm going to use at least a whole bag in here, so I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that's all in there. That, and the same thing like before, thoroughly mix that. And if that's the viscosity that you want, go ahead and use it. If not, you can either add more out of the second package if you desire. Would really appreciate it if you share the video. If you know someone that can benefit from these types of videos, I'd really appreciate that. Thanks a lot, guys. Now, when you're mixing component C, it's going to get a little bit tougher to mix. It's almost like a paste. I'm kind of looking to mix it where it's more of a paste. So there you are. It's getting a lot. If you can see, it's almost like cookie dough, if you want to. I'm just going to go ahead and mix this up for a couple minutes. So now that the epoxy is mixed, component A, B, and C, we're ready to start the application of the patch kit. So keep in mind, when you're working with this, you have about 40 to 45 minutes of bucket life to work with this. So you have enough time. You can't take all that time though. You have to work fairly quickly so that the epoxy doesn't harden up in your bucket and the product's garbage after that. So the first thing we're going to do, here's our noticeable crack. We're going to be filling this. So what I like to do is just take the stir stick, or doesn't matter what you use, just to get some on the floor there. I'm going to use this spatula and then just work it out. Doesn't have to be, you're not painting or anything like that. You're just trying to work the epoxy into the crack, pressing it in, and just work towards me. Because when I do the first coat later on, that's going to completely cover this. Okay, when you run out, you can just put some more here. Try not to leave any clumps. So we're back on day 2. The epoxy patch kit is dried for 24 hours. Now we're ready to start the first application of the first coat of epoxy color. So, also like the patch kit, we also have a component A and a component B. Now also take note, we're using a fast dry epoxy, which dries in about 8 to 12 hours. So we want to apply the second coat probably around the 16-hour mark. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this up. And here we're going to be using a custom dark gray color. And there it is there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to mix the fast dry component B into the component A. We need to mix it for about 3 to 5 minutes and then start the application process. With this particular product, the fast dry, you have to use it very quickly. You probably only have about 25 to 30 minutes of bucket life. After that, it'll harden up and it's garbage, so you have to work very fast. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this in. I'm going to use a drill and a mixing bit to do the mixing. Just pour all of the contents in. and I'm just going to go ahead and start mixing. Okay, so it's thoroughly mixed. We're gonna just use one of these little cup holders, and I gotta do the cuts along the walls. So I'm just gonna get a little bit of epoxy into the cup, and I'm just gonna use just a cheap brush. It doesn't have to be anything fancy because you can never reuse the brush. So you want disposable brushes, and we're gonna use this brush to cut along the walls before I start the rolling process. Okay, so I'm just gonna start along the wall, just applying the epoxy, just enough so that my roller isn't gonna hit the wall. Maybe about 2 to 3 inches out. Okay, so now that we finished the cuts around the wall, we're just gonna go ahead and pour the epoxy into the tray, and we're gonna start the rolling process for the first coat. Just going to do small squares and then just back roll each way the epoxy. First roll from the roller is a little dry, so we're just going to wet it again. Okay, now I'm going to move the other way. Okay, so this is to give you an idea of what the first coat looks like. We've already finished up to here, so we're going to come back 24 hours from now to apply the finishing coat, second coat. Okay guys, we're back on our last day for our final coat of epoxy. Just like the first coat, we've already mixed epoxy. We're going to go ahead and start the cuts along the wall before we start rolling the epoxy. Okay, so we've done the cuts along the wall, so we're ready to apply the final coat of epoxy. Same thing like before, I'm just gonna spread the epoxy out up against as close to the wall as I can, and then just back rolling it across. Okay, so we're just finishing up the second coat. We're working our way out of the building. It's very important to know where you're going to start and where you're going to exit, because we have to close the doors as we're leaving. So this is the finishing coat. Just want to thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, turn notifications on for upcoming videos, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Thanks a lot guys from doitallsealing.com. Take care guys, bye-bye.